Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Today we have Samuel Delesque from the podcast Traditional Dream Factory is the project. They're shaping a new era of regenerative living in Portugal's Alentejo region. And as we're interviewing pretty much everyone who has sort of a network state type project, and especially like the fact that yours is in Portugal, where, by the way, I'm a resident as well. So I wanted to hear about what you guys got going on, and hopefully I'll even visit in person someday. So Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about like kind of everything you got going on, because I know you have a Telegram group that's like crypto related, and I don't know, it's like it's almost hard to track down exactly all the things you got going on.
Yeah. Well, so the first thing we're doing is building a physical space, like as opposed to a lot of ideas and concept out there. Like we have an actual land in Portugal. It's an old chicken farm. So we have 1,500 square meters of existing buildings that we're converting into a co-living space for catering towards digital nomads, artists, burner type people that like to have common facilities and that like to be living in the land, but that still want to have a connection to technology, being able to be productive and all of that. And we've been here for about 4 years now.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, basically we've been also creating different digital infrastructures that can empower these type of spaces. And this infrastructure is starting to also expand out to other spaces than just ourselves. But so yeah, there's both a digital aspect, digital company, which is called Closer, which is our software platform, which is expanding out to more and more villages around the world, mainly around Europe, but also starting in Africa and other places. And then there's this network that we're stewarding ourselves, which we are seeing was an ecological network state kind of concept.
Okay, cool. And I found one photo online where it's almost like a U-shaped longhouse thing. Is that part of the land?
Exactly. That the U shape is the old chicken farm. It's basically three main buildings, three main big warehouses that are about 1,500 square meters, and we're expanding that out with one of the buildings being 14-bedroom co-living that we're building.
Wow.
One of the buildings being event space and co-working area and bar cafe, and then one building which is reserved for workshop area, maker space, industrial kitchen.
And you guys purchased this property how long ago?
So we found the property in 2020, and then it took us about 6-8 months to get all the contracts in place. Basically, it's actually two properties. So you have the U-shaped buildings that you mentioned. Those buildings we purchased from the get-go. But then we also signed a lease with an option to buy on 25 hectares of land surrounding this property.
Nice.
So basically, we have the whole expansion plan to turn from a smallish co-living space to a full-size village with about 100 people that can live in the entire village over time. And so, yeah, right now we're basically in that phase of expansion. So we're actually preparing a tiny home development and looking at acquiring the rest of the 25 hectares. Yeah.
And I know Portugal is pretty strict about land use. Like I was looking at a couple like little farm properties, and there's this, I forget exactly what the wording is. It's like the license or licenciao, and then it'll be like this property doesn't have licenciao because maybe they built some stuff that they didn't get the license for, and like it's almost like don't touch that type of property because it's so complicated. How was the process for you? Was it complicated? Were things up to code? And then maybe you had to get licenses to like change the use of the property from agriculture to co-living?
Yeah, so I mean, Portugal is a quite bureaucratic country. I guess advantage compared to a bit further north in Europe is that a lot of things are still kind of gray zone. So you find a lot of properties in Portugal that are developed somehow illegally, but that's really starting to come to an end. That period, like a lot of projects, even things like Tamera, for example, they build a lot of illegal structures, and basically they never were able to gain the right to build like residential homes. And for us, like it was really important to come in with like a solid full legal framework for how to actually create those structures. So we had architects from the beginning, right as we started, and we designed it together. And we created a project that was very appealing to the local municipality. And the main thing that we did is we took existing buildings. We took an abandoned chicken farm, which in its current shape is more of a liability than an asset to the local community and to the local mayor and so on. And we created a project to renovate that and to turn that into a tourism business. So yeah, basically by having a tourism license, and now we spent about 3-4 years like doing the whole permitting process, architectural, the engineering and everything. And we finally received the full construction permit here in December, which means that now we are basically legally able to build out a whole project for the co-living facilities that we had envisioned. And for the rest of the project, I mean, there's going to be partly residential. We have actually like over 4,000 square meters of urban land, part of the properties that we're acquiring. So on that means that you can actually build quite easily because it's urban, so you can just build houses. And then we also have other parts which are rural land, but where there is an existing farmhouse, that gives us this right to build around that and so on. So we have all of the legal framework to be able to do it. A lot of people come to Portugal and they're saying, okay, I can just buy a piece of rural land in the middle of nowhere and just do whatever I want. And for some people, that
work like that.
Yeah.
I think it's called the licença de uso, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. The use. The license of use,
license of use, because I was looking at one, I was like, this looks cool, and then anyway. But if people want to look this up, the property that we're talking about, if you just type in traditional dream factory on Google Maps, it's on Google Maps, and I'm looking at it right now. It's like right by the Abela town center. So Abela is the name of the town in Portugal, and you're like, this whole property is like walking distance from the town center. You could like walk to the local cafe and stuff. So it's actually a pretty sick location.
Yeah, we really fell in love with the place as soon as we arrived here, because we wanted to have some sense of privacy, and we also wanted to have some sense of proximity to a local community and not just be in our own bubble all the time. And so here, because the buildings are kind of on one side of the town, you just have a small hill separating the two. That means that we don't have direct line of sight with a village, but you can walk to the center square in 5 minutes, and it's actually quite an alive village. You have a museum, you have an olive press, you have like 3 or 4 different cafes and a sports club and all kind of things. So yeah, it's kind of nice to be able to just plug into the local, just to the local culture and just have that integration, have the locals also come here. And I guess one of the particularities is that these buildings had actually been abandoned for 20 years, but the people who owned them, they were really part of the core social fabric of the village. And so they had actually been using the buildings to host town parties here. So we've kept the tradition going. So once in a while, we host a town party, you get the locals to come. And then we also mix that up with like digital nomads coming. And like right now we have a team of Colombians, our constructors who are on site. So we had, for example, a town party in December where we had both a psytrance DJ, local Colombian music, and the local accordionist playing. So it's kind of a melting pot of cultures in a rural context.
Amazing. And I see on the website you got a sauna. Is that set up? Is the sauna rocking?
Yep. Sauna was one of the first things we built.
Good. And who, like, people can come and I guess they can go to the website and like book a month to live in the co-living already?
Yeah, so I mean, it's still very much in construction. We're still like in the build phase. Like this year is really particularly when we're doing a big push on build. But we have all kind of different ways to stay. And basically the ways that we set things up is we try to gamify living with, as an externality, leaving a positive trace on nature. And so we want to provide a way for any humans to come and be part of this new experiment of how do we create a regenerative way of life. And so therefore we're offering volunteering opportunities, residencies for skilled workers who can do
Sure.
like some build projects. We're offering stewardship, which is a 3 month program where we really get like a full immersion in what it actually takes to be building and running a village. Um, and then we also have just like regular guests who come for a few days who can just book through the website. And yeah, and
Cool.
finally, we also have members. So members are people that are more committed to the long term, who own our token and who can participate in the governance and so on.
Cool. And you can come and van life it up, 150 euros a month to park the van, take advantage of the sauna, the Wi-Fi, I guess the co-working space is included in that for the 150 bucks.
Yeah. I mean, this is basically like these are our prices in the build phase, right? Like we don't have like full finished amenities and so on. So yeah, it's really quite cheap to come and spend some time.
It's
You
pretty
can
cheap.
even come and stay for free by volunteering a few hours every day.
Uh-huh.
So it's really very accessible for people to be able to come and stay. The full finished co-living rooms will be a bit higher price point,
No,
obviously,
I'm sure.
because
Yeah, it's not gonna be 150 bucks for an actual room, but
yeah,
I mean that's cool. I mean, I'm sure you got some showers that with some hot water, hopefully, and as long
yeah.
as you got hot water and Wi-Fi, I mean, and a sauna, like sounds good to me.
We have Starlink, we have hot showers. We are looking at getting a fiber connection to the village. I just
Mhm.
received a quote yesterday, which came in at 19,000 euros. So we're trying to figure out if there's some good business cases, if we can pull more people together from the town to get that going. But yeah,
Mm.
eventually the goal is to be like a technology hub at the frontier with nature, between technology and nature. So we do want to have access to great facilities to work from. Whatever it is that you love doing, whether you're a chef and you want an industrial kitchen, we have that. Or if you want a co-working space to work on some digital products, we have that, and it's only going to get better. But also providing spaces for artists to be creative. We're looking at building a music studio pretty soon. We have a music producer who has been living on site for about half of his time.
Mhm.
So yeah, basically bringing all of these facilities out to the middle of nature where we can be living surrounded by trees and beautiful people, but still being productive in whatever thing that gets us in a state of flow.
Love it. And explain to me the difference between the OASA and TDF.
Yeah, so OASA basically is our ecological conservation network. So the way that we structured the project is to have, we wanted to build a network of spaces around the world. So this is what OASA is. OASA is going to be a collection of 10 to 12 villages around the world, which serve as a model for regeneration.
Mhm.
But OASA is also our ecological conservation layer. So the way that we structured it, you have each local project. So Traditional Dream Factory, TDF, is the first project.
Mhm.
Is composed of a local company, so an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, which basically holds the real estate assets here in Portugal. And this is kind of our way to communicate with the Portuguese government, to legalize all the things, to be able to apply for grants and so on. So this is a company that's operating the project, that's building the project. But then OASA basically owns 100% of this SPV. And what that means is that OASA can enforce certain ecological principles on the land, and it can make the bridge into Web3. So OASA is a Swiss nonprofit. It's registered in Switzerland.
Hmm.
And we issued a token 2 years ago, which has been reviewed by the Swiss authorities and has been basically fully approved as a utility token. So that means that now we can go out and sell a utility token that comes with governance rights and access rights to these pieces of real estate that are in nature. And we can pass down the use right to the property that is in Portugal. And so OASA aims to expand to more locations around the world. And basically, the only thing that OASA enforces is its principles for regenerative land stewardship. So we have pretty strict guideline around what each project can and cannot do with the land. For example, we have a requirement that the project puts 50% of the land aside for rewilding purposes. And this is because we're in the middle of a biodiversity crisis. We're losing millions of species, and we've actually lost about 90% of nature of the last century. And so we need to get spaces back to nature for nature to be able to just continue existing. And without nature, there's no humans either. So we're
Mhm.
kind of based on these very strong ecological principles. And this is kind of the constitutional level of the project. So OASA enforces this constitutional level, which is the regenerative principles, and it also enforces a decentralization of the project. It enforces that each of the lands has its own token, its own governance model, and that the access to that land is decentralized. But within those constraints, then each project has its own local entity, its own token, its own governance, its own set of members, which means that it has a lot of sovereignty to make its own decision in terms of how do we want to live together.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by job stacking. If you're a remote or hybrid worker looking to maximize your earning potential, then Rolf Holze, author of Job Stacking, guarantees you'll be able to double your income by implementing his paycheck multiplication layering method. This is the exact system Rolf has used to take his own income and those of many others beyond $20K a month. With this method, Rolf contractually guarantees that you'll be able to double your income in 45 days. So, if you're interested in unleashing your earning potential and doubling your income, then click the link in the description and book a call with Rolf right now. Okay. And so OASA is going to have multiple places all over Europe, all over the world. TDF is basically the Portugal, the Abela thing,
Exactly.
community. Okay.
Yeah, TDF is the first prototype, and yeah, eventually there will be more spaces in the OASA network. And then, like I started talking a little bit about, basically the third part is the technology aspect. So everything that we needed to build in order to be able to provide the utility to Ethereum-based token, by having a booking contract and these kind of things, we kind of package all of that into its own standalone technology platform so that other communities can basically leverage the same model that has already the Swiss legal jurisprudence in order to be able to establish their own decentralized spaces.
Got it. And are you Swiss, or what's your background?
No, I'm French and Danish originally, and via New York, and then I was digital nomading for a while and ended up in Portugal 5 years ago.
French Danish, so Delesque, French name.
Exactly.
Cool. And so, do you have a lot of Danes or Frenchies involved in the project?
We are super international. It really changes all the time. In the fall, we had quite a lot of Scandies, but it's more. It's more just because of, I guess, the connections of where we end up going. We went on tour last summer. We went to different burns around Europe, and we went to different crypto conferences and so on. And so then a lot of people end up showing up from these spaces. But yeah, it's really super international. You'll find people from France and Denmark, sure, but also Germany, from the US, we had a whole Chinese group in the fall as well, who are building a bunch of community spaces in China. So you really find people from everywhere here.
That's crazy. And what's a burn, by the way? Is that like a Burning Man type of hippie thing, or?
Yeah, exactly. It's basically the Burning Man event has like different branches in other countries. So there's one in Spain called Nowhere. There's one in Sweden called Borderland. And there's like all of these other burns around the world, more localized.
I had no idea.
Burning Man is definitely like one of the cultures that has shaped us. Just because like the power of co-creation that really comes with this event. Burning Man is an event that's fully created by the participants. There's no central organization planning the stages or planning the content or whatever. Burning Man only provides a frame, which is a perimeter with like tickets and toilets and the city planning, and everything else is done by the participants. And so within that frame and within this kind of culture, we found a lot of people who really resonate with that, and applying this and simply adding some regenerative ethos on top of it is kind of what we're doing. Creating a city that's based on duocracy, empowering people to build, to do the things, to have just like a a gamified approach to how we can build a regenerative way of life.
So how is the ownership structure of the traditional Dream Factory?
So, like I said, we have this Swiss association,
Yeah.
which is controlled by a DAO. So you have a DAO, which is called, which is TDF basically. TDF includes a DAO, which has its own treasury, its own token, and then this DAO governs basically the TDF land project, and so that includes a local company on the ground here in Portugal. So the local company in Portugal is the development company, and this entity is the one that will be acquiring all the different lands within the Portugal project. But then this company is 100% owned by the association. So basically, it's a way to put land into the commons, and we just have a local company that kind of is the way to communicate with local authorities and to have a better local integration.
So it's a Portuguese company that's basically owned by a Swiss nonprofit?
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay. And what was the process of raising money like? I mean, did you sort of like raise the money for the project with crypto? Was it like, how did that, tell me kind of more of that story.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess initially, like I kind of helped bootstrap the project a lot. I had like a background in software engineering, and I've been doing working for corporates for 10 years in the US. So I was able to basically kick off the process by buying the initial land. So that really helped us kind of bootstrap and get to a point of having a minimum viable village. And then from then on, then we started having other investors coming in. So initially we had a group of shareholders in the Portuguese companies that we started to onboard. And then eventually all of these shareholders got converted into tokens when we launched our token 2 years ago. And since then, we've been growing our number of token holders. We have about 137 people currently who hold a token. And we're going to be launching a next big phase of improvement to how we actually sell tokens, because I think the main thing that we noticed is people like the idea of decentralized governance and so on, but also they just need something very simple and don't really care about Web3 or the whole technology that's actually behind it that enables all of this. And so we need to get to the point where it's like super, super easy. And so what we're going to be launching next month is a super simple on-ramp where people can actually pay with bank transfers. And we're also offering a possibility for people to finance their tokens over 3 years. So to become a member, we ask each of the citizens to purchase 30 TDF tokens. So that's still quite an investment. It's like nothing if you compare to like real estate, but it's still like 7,000 to 10,000 euros. So it is a chunk of money. And so now you'll be able to finance that over 3 years, which will be enabling us to get a lot more people into the funnel. Like I said, right now we have 137 token holders, but the goal is to have about 300 or so who basically hold 30 to 60 tokens, which correspond to the same amount of nights per year that they can come and spend in this space.
And how does that work where as the number of token holders increases, you're diluting the ownership share of the existing shareholders? So how does that
So the way we issue the token is based on occupancy. So what backs the token is a number of nights that are available to spend every year in the project. So one token is one night spent per year forever. So if you buy one token, every year you can come back for one night. And the number of tokens that we mint is basically based on the total supply of rooms that are available. So because we know that we're building 14 rooms in the co-living, and there's going to be some glamping tents available and some other kind of facilities, then based on that, we have a total supply of tokens. So that means that when you're buying a token, you know that you will always have like a claim on the total number of rooms available. So the maximum number of tokens that we can sell is the total number of rooms that are available. And then after that, basically you have a market. So you still need to be able to, because not everyone will be able to book on the same day, for example. So there will still be an incentive structure around spreading the occupancy throughout the year. But basically, you're taking away the whole idea of paying rent to a landlord or this kind of thing, because the assets are put into the commons and they're owned by a non-for-profit that serves the purpose of conservation. And what you get through the token is a fractional access to that asset.
Okay, makes sense. And so you haven't tokenized the actual land ownership.
I mean, I call it tokenized. Other people call tokenized assets something else. But to me, this is like the best way to actually tokenize land assets, because this is putting the land into the commons. It's ensuring that this land will remain within the purpose that has been set for it, which is to be regenerated and to provide housing for thriving humans. And within that context, you can buy the token, which gives you the right to live in that land. So because this bridge is perpetual, because no one would ever be able to take away that land because it belongs to a nonprofit. And that means that you can basically guarantee that token holders will be able to continue claiming that utility right for the foreseeable future. So it's a little bit different from tokenizing a land where you're just moving the ownership representation from the registry of a government into some NFT, for example. And then you're able to just perpetuate the same ownership model that has always existed. This is creating a new form of ownership, which is more related to stewardship. The difference being ownership is a right to get rid of, and the right to destroy. So that actually comes from a Latin law. And all of these rights is kind of what has surrounded this sense of ownership, and this is what has been causing ecological destructions over the last centuries, is that we've been taking away from nature and we've been extracting value from the land because there's this imperative for profit. On the contrary, in our case, it's a stewardship token, because you have the right to use, you're able to come on the land, but you also have the obligation to leave a positive trace because you're living under those regenerative ethos.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Crema Social. Crema Social is like TikTok for international dating. It's an app you can download right now on your phone, and 3 out of 4 people on Crema are single women. The app was founded in Colombia, so unsurprisingly, there are a lot of Latinas on the app, by the way. So how does it work? Crema Social is a social meal experience where you invite a hot girl for a lunch date via video call and food delivery. New concept, so you'll have to try it out for yourself, but this is probably the best way to meet Latinas before you visit the country. So if you're in Latin America or planning to visit Latin America, download Crema Social now and start getting dates right away. There will be a link in the description to download, or just search Crema Social on your favorite app store. Have fun, guys. Okay, definitely makes sense. And so do people I guess the idea is you never sell because it's a nonprofit, but is the people who own the DAO or the people who get access to, a number of nights per year to stay in the co-living, is that different than the ownership of who actually owns the land? Like, because if it were to sell, it's worth probably like $1 million or something like that, maybe more. I mean, do the DAO participants get to participate in that, or how's that work?
So like I said, it's a one-way entry into the commons. The land is purchased once, but then it ends up in the realm of commons, meaning that it will never be sold again. It's going to be maintained by this association. Eventually, it's going to be probably a foundation that kind of enforces the continuity of the project. But what the token holders get, it's a token that gives them the right to use. And this token can have a secondary marketplace, right? So basically, you're shifting the market away from being able to resell for profit, being able to resell the land in order to build a golf course or whatever you want. And like thereby just perpetuating like a destructive development model. But you have a secondary market. So basically, once a project is built, we have what we call a go live, which is described in a white paper. which is a moment when the project is basically built out to sufficient level that at that point all the tokens become liquid, and anyone can then resell the token on the open market.
For the nights. But you put in a lot of money to get this thing going. So did you have to get your money back, or was it basically just a expensive donation?
No, so my money is still fully vested in the project, mostly in the form of tokens, and that means that as soon as a project goes live, which we expect to be within a year and a half, something like that, because we're in full construction mode right now. At that point, basically, the secondary market will be opening, and that means that I will be able to then sell my tokens to people who want to actually come and spend time here. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, I fully believe in this model, and I fully believe that we need to shift ownership into something that looks more like this, and creating a way through technology to make it super easy to get access to real estate, to have the exposure. And what we've noticed over the last couple of years is our project is much more correlated to real estate assets than to crypto. So our token price has been increasing at 15% per year. We're not seeing a massive spike in the beginning and then dropping to nothing like most ICOs in the crypto space. It's more like a slow build of value, because we're just adding value to the land. We're restoring the soil. We're building water retention infrastructure. We just created our first lake, and we have a massive biopool. We're storing over 1,000 cubic meters of water so that we can have water throughout the dry season. And we're little by little renovating these real estate assets, which makes it more and more attractive for people to come. And so the number of people who are interested in coming and just continuously growing with the development of the asset and with the word just getting out there. And so that means that there's more and more demand essentially for the token. And so basically by the time that the project will be built to a sufficient level, and where we don't need to raise a fixed amount of capital in order to do more construction, at that point we can make the token liquid and offer anyone to be able to just transfer their shares, their tokens across people.
It's really cool. So you mentioned Burning Man as being one of the original inspirations, being a software developer too, and playing with crypto, I imagine had an impact. What are some of the other building blocks of your philosophy or early inspirations that put you on this path?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we're kind of at a convergence point between technology, nature, Burning Man culture. I think permaculture and when you start to work with land, and when you start to have an ecological mindset about seeing land and how we've been destroying land, essentially, I think that's for me is the biggest influence. And there's a great philosophy in permaculture about seeing the maximum potential of our land. So when you start to have that awareness and that perception of actually working for our land rather than having the land work for you, it means putting more organic matter into the soil. It means capturing more rainwater so that you can feed more growth and so on and so on. To me, that's really the core of this project. Is really working with this natural perspective and working with the land to regenerate it and to create more abundance, to create abundance for ourselves, but also to create abundance for life in general. And I think this is how real estate development should be done anywhere in the world. Everyone who is starting a real estate project or buying land or whatever should definitely do a permaculture course, because it's really a way to start looking at all the different systems, how they link to each other, and how you can feed the resources and the waste from the different systems into each other in order to create more abundance for the future, rather than depleting the resources that you currently have access to.
So what actually is permaculture? How do you define that?
I mean, people tend to link permaculture just with beautiful organic gardens and these kind of things, but it's a bit broader than that. The idea of permaculture is it's a set of principles, basically. I think that's the most important things, and those principles include limiting external inputs and working with what you have on the land and trying to close the loops. So it's kind of the opposite of traditional modern agriculture, which is using a lot of external inputs, tractors, and so on, to produce the maximum amount of goods per unit of labor. Where in permaculture, it's more about producing more total organic value. So producing more soil, producing more food, producing more habitats for wildlife, and so on. But kind of seeing more as a broader chain of life and not being so narrowly focused on one metric. So yeah, I think there's like many aspects to it, but yeah, I think at the core, I think that's maybe one of the more important things is like how can we look at nature with this eyes of being a keystone species, of actually enhancing what's there rather than looking at nature as a resource to be taken from.
Cool. Makes sense. You got to hit us with some good stories from the project. I know there's been some funny stuff. You mentioned trying to get the fiber cable to the village, which I'm sure is funny, or maybe like you've had to probably improve the infrastructure quite a lot, taking essentially a chicken coop and probably like redoing the electricity and everything. What have been some of the obstacles and kind of like, you know, funny Southern Europe situations you've encountered?
Oh, I mean, it's an ongoing process. There's always something, that's for sure. The electrical for sure has been an ongoing challenge, or well, possibility. um, I don't know what would some of the most interesting things be. I mean, I think just like being in this kind of really super local context. So if you look at the town of Abela, it's a town of 400. There's a museum of it's a museum of rural work, and it's like ultra traditional. Like, I mean, there's the people harvesting the cork around. There's some pig farms around. There's people with sheep, and there's an olive press, and that's kind of the industry. And we come there with like our Web3 technology and our digital nomads and creating all of this infrastructure. So I think it's just like these little moments of connections between that old culture, which has been here since a while, and this new culture, which hasn't arrived here, like where like it's nothing like a gentrifying area or anything like that. It's really like very authentic, and it's really beautiful to see like the symbiosis of these two cultures really merging together. Like I was mentioning this town party where we had like a psytrance DJ who was one of the construction workers who ended up playing, and having the 70-year-old people from the town who came for the accordion and ended up staying for the psytrance. So I think these little moments are quite beautiful. And yeah, I mean, just learning to work with land when most of us come from a more digital background, that obviously is like something that takes years and years, and where there's so much to be learned, and you come with expectation that you'll just put a few trees in the ground and they'll just grow magically and uh, and create abundance, and it ends up being a lot more. You have to understand the microbiology of the soil, how to capture more water, and how to set up irrigation system. I think irrigation system is maybe one of the systems that has taken the most cognitive capacity in terms of just breaking down all the time, having to work with pumps and leaks and all of that. Those are just like all the little things from the day-to-day life that end up catching you.
And tell me more about the relationship with the local townspeople and the project and the culture clash. But I'm sure maybe it's one of those things where um, some people are very for it. Maybe some people are against it, but maybe just because they misunderstood and they thought it was just going to be, super hippie or like super like, was it like gentrification type thing. But maybe then you bring them to show them and, you're doing all this regenerative projects that are improving the land, and maybe they came around.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why we picked Portugal was actually because we felt super welcome. It was quite different from if you're in Spain or France or Italy. I feel like there's a bit more skepticism when someone new comes to town.
Hmm.
Portugal just came out of a dictatorship 50 years ago. And so you still feel the remnants of that. And you still feel, Alentejo, the region that we are in, used to be owned by 7 families under the dictatorship. So it's really like in the very near, like in the very near past that all of this has changed. And you also have a big like social uh, like cooperative movement in Portugal, and
Hmm.
so you have a lot of that. Like for example, our town is communist. Like it's the PCP is a local communist party that is in place, and so they kind of have a different mindset about strangers and community. So it's been very interesting to plug into that existing culture. And of course, like there's differences and misunderstandings and so on. And not all of our neighbors like it when we are playing techno on a Saturday night on a big sound system. Uh, but despite that, they they remain super curious. We have Jose, he's like this 70-year-old man who used to work in the chicken farm 30, 40 years ago. He's coming pretty much every day and just checking out what we're doing and bringing his curiosity and opinions, um, but not in a way where it's like this divisiveness. Things that we can see, especially in the US, where everything is so polemic all the time. I think there's a bit more of a sense of an understanding of just being together and supporting each other, even if we don't understand each other perfectly.
The techno. I mean, I'm sure that's. What do you do? Do you like try to notify the town, hey, there's going to be a thing, or you just say, fuck it?
Um, I mean, there is a process to set up a public event and getting a license for it.
Yeah.
Uh, but like everything in Portugal is like just so much bureaucracies that most things just stay in the gray zone, and it's not really worth digging too deep. For the important things, we do it, but when it comes to just having a party, if the cops end up coming and telling us to lower the music at 1 a.m., then we're also okay with that. Um, and generally, I mean, we have a party once in a while, and the people mostly appreciate it. Like we do have locals showing up sometimes when we play music, and then once in a while we'll get a noise complaint. Well, I think we had like maybe 3 over the last 4 years, so it's not like
Not too bad. Not too bad.
not yeah, exactly.
Okay. And what did you say that the town is communist or the part the what?
Yeah. The local town is communist. Like the Communist Party is pretty big in Portugal.
What?
Um,
I
but
didn't
I
know
mean,
that.
it's not like the. I think Americans generally have this perception of communism as like Soviet. uh, in Europe, it's more just like the left side of things, and generally, it's just like like the Labour Party kind of thing. It's not as extreme as you would imagine it. Um, and yeah, but I mean, there's definitely more of this like cooperative movement. There's like we're also working, for example, our architects and so on are part of a big co-op, which is called Minga, which is in a town a bit northeast from here where I used to live. And it's a little bit like the Mondragon thing in Spain. So you have all this more cooperative movements as well, and people, big part of alternative social fabrics.
Minga. Minga, Portugal?
Yeah,
MINGA?
yep,
Cooperativa Integral Minga Largo Machado.
yep.
Okay. And what's Mondragon? I feel like I've heard of this. But
It's I think Mondragon is the biggest cooperative. I think it started by I think it was some steel factories that were shutting down, and then the employees collectivized and they created a cooperative, and then buying back the factory, and then that grew out to all kind of other businesses. And so it's basically a way for employees and workers to own the means of production, and so it's quite popular in Europe. You have quite a lot of co-ops, also in Germany and so on, and I mean, you can think of it as physical DAOs. Like it's probably the closest legal entity corresponding to a DAO, where the people who do the work are more equal in front of the entities that governs it. So generally, you have more governance rights. Generally, it's not necessarily one member, one vote like associations, but it can be, for example, as you have like certain limits to how much governance power each person can have, and so on. So it's really more geared towards making humans more equal. Um, it is one of the types of legal entities we were considering to start our project. But the main reason we ended up going for the kind of stack that we have, where we have a mix of a non-profit and a for-profit company, is that we actually wanted to give rights back to nature and not just to equalize humans, because eventually we believe that we need to have a healthy ecosystem as well as a healthy social fabric, and as well as a healthy economy on the land.
Mm. Okay, cool, cool. So tell me this, as we get to wrapping up in a couple of minutes here. If someone else wanted to build sort of a similar project like this, buy a big piece of land, put a co-working on it, all that stuff, I'm sure a lot of people dream to do something like this. What advice would you have for them?
I mean, I speak to people starting projects all the time. So there's many different advices. I think the first one is like start by creating a successful business. Like uh, you have this beautiful idea and you think that you can just move to the land and that people will just follow you and so on. And a lot of people commit the mistake of not really having an operational business that can generate income from the beginning. And that's one thing that kills a lot of projects. I think another one is like explore governance models and set up a structure where you can include other people in the as a stakeholder and be part of the project and give them governance, right? Because that's another thing that's been killing a lot of these kind of idealistic community projects. Um, a lot of the projects that started in the 60s, the whole first wave of eco villages and so on, they started out without much of a governance protocol at all. And I think these days that we have Web3 technology and we have so much diversity of things that we can do in terms of governance, um, experiment, try out different things. It's very new. There's not so many land-based projects that are actually implementing any Web3 protocols.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we are helping a lot of projects kind of get started with that digital infrastructure to make that possible. And yeah, I think the third thing would be hire a good permaculture person to really make a long-term plan for your land, because a permaculture person will look at the maximum potential for your land. You'll create your whole master plan, and the more you can put into your master plan, where you really leveraging every little piece of your land to its maximum potential from an ecological, social, and economic perspective, the more you can kind of start hitting the road on that roadmap of actually taking action and doing the things. Because if you put a road in the wrong place, or you put a lake in the wrong place because of whatever thing needs to come next, that's going to be a very expensive mistake to make. So invest a bit of money, not just in your architectural plan, but also in your land design when you're working with a bigger area like that.
Mm. And how would you find someone like that, like an expert in the land?
I mean, there's many networks, and if you just like ask around for permaculture designer and get some recommendations, if you are in Portugal or Spain, I can definitely give some advice and recommend you some people. But yeah, I mean, it's a specialty. Like people that really focus on that, and you'll be able to just ask them for some previous work, and you'll see like what permaculture designs they've made and master plan that they've created for lands, and see if you vibe with it. And yeah, I think with that you should be able to have an idea quite quickly.
Okay, cool, cool. And are you getting some good fruit trees? Like I know in Portugal they can do so many different fruit trees. Are you gonna get like lemon trees? What do you got going on?
Yeah, so we planted over 4,000 trees to date. Most of those are support species, native species, and so on. So we're growing pines and oaks, and madroño is like a strawberry tree. They have like red berries, not super
Oh, wow.
tasty, but you can make liquor out of it. Those are more like our native trees. But then we have a food forest, and in this food forest we have everything from persimmons, and we have prunes, and we have almonds and walnuts and lemons, and we're starting some grapes soon, so we can make our own wine eventually. And there's a lot of biodiversity. We have at least 100 species of trees on the land already.
Wow, 100 species. That's crazy. Amazing, man. Cool. Well, let's kind of get to wrapping up. Why don't you take this time and let people know where they can find you, contact you, learn more about the project?
Yeah, so I mean, we're open for business. You can come and visit us on the ground at Traditional Dream Factory. You can find us on traditionaldreamfactory.com. We are launching our token offering next month with a finance token plan, and we're going to be hosting a lot of events. We're hosting a festival in the middle of March called Harmonia. So super excited for that. We're going to have some amazing artists on the ground, and this is going to be our first reopening with all the infrastructures that we built this winter, including our pool and lake and so on. And we're looking for builders, residents who want to come spend some time with us and build all these nice projects, including a mushroom farm and many other projects that are coming online over the next 6 months.
That's awesome, man. I'm sure the festival is going to be fun. I'll make sure to boost this episode in the order so we get it out before the festival and everything, so people got time to get over there.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Cool. Well, let's wrap it up there. This has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, our guest today, Samuel Delesque from Traditional Dream Factory. You can become the next sheep DAO holder.
Exactly.
Cool. Citizen. Link will be in the description. And guys, wherever you're listening to this as well, subscribe to the podcast, leave a review. Really helps. And check out Sam's group on Telegram. Check out all the My Latin Life groups on Telegram as well. And we'll see you in the next episode. Ciao for now.